The night nurse arrived without ceremony. No announcements, no confidence, no reason for anyone to notice her. She clocked in quietly, tied her hair back, and took the worst assignment in the ER: overflow beds, unstable patients, and a doctor who barely looked up when she spoke. To them, she was just another overnight nurse filling a schedule gap. Then the trauma call came in. An unidentified male, critical condition, multiple internal injuries, no paperwork, no background, just a body failing fast. Doctors rushed. Orders collided. Voices rose. And then something happened that didn't make sense. The room went silent, not because someone asked for quiet, but because everyone instinctively stopped talking. The night nurse stepped forward. Her posture changed. Her voice dropped. Her presence filled the room like gravity. One of the surgeons froze mid-sentence. Another swallowed hard. Because the woman they'd ignored all night wasn't just a nurse. And when the ER finally realized who had just walked in, they understood one terrifying truth: they should have listened sooner. Before we continue, like the video, subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. The ER at Harbor Point Medical Center never truly slept. At night, it simply breathed slower. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a pale glow across polished floors and stainless steel counters. The smell of antiseptic lingered in the air, sharp and familiar. Monitors beeped in steady rhythms, background noise to the people who worked here long enough to stop hearing them. It was 2:11 a.m., the hour when mistakes happened not because people didn't care, but because they were tired enough to think they already knew the answer. The night nurse signed in quietly. Her name was Lieutenant, no, her badge didn't say that anymore. It read Nurse Evelyn Ross, plain scrubs, no pins, no jewelry. Hair pulled back tight into a low knot. She moved with economy, wasting no motion, no time. She didn't greet the charge desk loudly or joke with the text the way some nurses did. She just checked the board: overflow beds, trauma backup. One isolation room no one wanted. She took all of them, no one objected. They rarely did when the night nurse volunteered for the worst assignments. Dr. Ryan Caldwell, the overnight attending, glanced up briefly from his tablet. "You're covering bays 6 through 9, he said. "We're short tonight." Evelyn nodded. Understood. That was the extent of their interaction. To Caldwell, she was just another body filling a slot on the schedule. Competent, maybe. Quiet, definitely. Nothing about her suggested authority, leadership, or experience beyond the hospital walls. And that was exactly how she wanted it. The ER drifted through the early part of the shift without incident. A fractured wrist, an intoxicated college student, an elderly man with chest pain that turned out to be anxiety. Evelyn moved between rooms with calm efficiency, checking vitals, adjusting IVs, listening more than she spoke. When patients panicked, her voice stayed low. When families demanded answers, she didn't rush them or dismiss them. She observed. She always did. In Bay 7, a trauma resident rushed past her, nearly colliding with her shoulder. "Watch it," he muttered, already moving on. Evelyn stepped aside without comment. Another nurse leaned in quietly. "He's been like that all night." Evelyn nodded once. "He's compensating." "For what?" "For fear," Evelyn replied simply. The nurse blinked. "Huh." At 2:47 a.m., the tone in the ER changed, not dramatically, subtly, the way air pressure drops before a storm. The automatic doors slid open and paramedics rushed in with a stretcher moving faster than usual. "Male, mid-50s, one shouted. "Found unconscious at a construction site. No ID. Severe internal trauma suspected. Vitals unstable." Doctors snapped into motion. "Trauma bay," Caldwell ordered. "Now." Evelyn looked up from her station. She didn't rush forward. She watched. The patient's face was gray, jaw clenched, muscles tight in a way that didn't match unconsciousness. His breathing was shallow but controlled. Not erratic, not panicked. Intentional. Evelyn felt a familiar tightening in her chest. That wasn't collapse. That was containment. She followed the stretcher into the trauma bay, staying just outside the swarm of bodies. "BP's dropping," a resident called out. "Prep intubation," Caldwell said. "We're not waiting." Evelyn stepped forward half a pace. "Doctor," she said calmly, "can we pause for 10 seconds?" Caldwell didn't look at her. "We don't have 10 seconds. We don't have the right diagnosis," Evelyn replied. That got his attention. He turned, irritation already on his face. "Excuse me?" Evelyn gestured subtly toward the patient's chest. "His breathing pattern doesn't match respiratory failure," she said. "And his neck, look at the tension." A resident scoffed. "He's crashing. What do you want us to do? Wait." "I want you to look," Evelyn said evenly. Caldwell's jaw tightened. "This is not the time for hypotheticals," he snapped. "Step back." Evelyn didn't argue. But she didn't step back either. She adjusted her position slightly and watched as they pushed forward. As preparations continued, the patient's hand twitched. Once, not a spasm, a signal. Evelyn's pulse stayed steady, but her mind accelerated. She'd seen this before, far from hospitals, far from clean floors and fluorescent lights. She'd seen men like this hold themselves together long past the point where the body should have given up. "Doctor," she said again, firmer now, "you're about to make this worse." Caldwell turned sharply. "That's enough." He looked at security already hovering near the doorway. "Get her out of here." The words landed like a gavel. Security stepped in immediately. "Ma'am, you need to leave the bay." Evelyn met Caldwell's eyes. "If you proceed without relieving the pressure first," she said quietly, "you're going to silence this room for the wrong reason." Caldwell scoffed. "Escort her out." The guards took her by the arms, not violently but decisively. Evelyn didn't resist. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't try to explain further, because experience had taught her something most people never learned. When authority feels threatened, it stops listening. As she was led down the corridor, staff looked up from their stations, some confused, some relieved, some uncomfortable. At the charge desk, her badge was unclipped and handed back to her. "Hospital policy," the guard said. Evelyn accepted it, then handed it right back. Inside the trauma bay, alarms continued. Outside the bay, the ER went on pretending everything was under control. At the exit, the automatic doors opened with a soft hiss. Cold night air rushed in. Evelyn stepped outside. The doors closed behind her. Inside, they believed the problem had been removed. Evelyn stopped beneath the dim glow of the parking lot lights. She didn't pace. She didn't curse. She took a slow breath and looked back through the glass. The alarms were louder now, sharper, wrong. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. One bar of signal flickered, then steadied. She typed a short message. No emotion, no justification, just facts. She pressed send. A few seconds passed. Then her phone vibrated, once, twice. Evelyn straightened slightly. Far above the hospital, somewhere beyond the darkness, a low, distant sound rolled through the night. Not thunder, rotors. Evelyn slipped the phone back into her pocket and waited, because the ER hadn't gone silent yet. But it was about to. Inside Harbor Point Medical Center, the trauma bay filled with motion the moment nurse Evelyn Ross was removed. Orders flew fast. Hands moved faster, but something essential was missing. "Doctor." Ryan Caldwell stood at the foot of the bed, jaw tight, eyes locked on the monitor as if daring it to cooperate. The patient's vitals refused to settle, heart rate spiking, oxygen dipping, blood pressure narrowing into a dangerous corridor. "Why isn't he responding?" Caldwell snapped. A resident adjusted the ventilator. "Settings are correct." "Then correct isn't enough," Caldwell replied sharply. The patient's chest rose shallowly, then paused just long enough to register as wrong before falling again. His jaw tightened visibly, muscles flexing beneath the skin. "That movement again," a nurse murmured. Caldwell ignored it. "Push the meds." The syringe plunged, nothing changed. The room began to feel crowded, not with people, but with uncertainty. "Run imaging," Caldwell ordered. "Stat." Radiology pushed back. "We need stabilization first." "Then stabilize him," Caldwell snapped. They tried fluids, oxygen, adjustments. Each bought seconds. None solved the problem. The patient's left hand twitched again. Same movement, same pattern. A resident frowned. "That's not random." Caldwell hesitated just long enough for doubt to creep in. Before he could respond, the monitor shrieked. "Oxygen saturation dropping." BP's crashing. The patient arched slightly against the restraints, body straining as if fighting something invisible. "Intubate," Caldwell barked. "Now." A nurse hesitated. "Doctor, what about pressure?" Caldwell's head snapped toward her. "Do it." The tube went in, and immediately everything collapsed. The alarm screamed louder than before. Chest movement stopped altogether. "What the hell?" Caldwell shouted. "Bag him." They tried. Nothing. The patient's oxygen plummeted. Heart rate spiraled. For the first time that night, Caldwell felt fear not for the patient but for himself. "This shouldn't be happening," he whispered. Outside in the parking lot, Evelyn Ross stood beneath the streetlight listening. She couldn't hear the monitors, but she could feel the shift. The wrong turn, her phone vibrated again. Status. Then, seconds later, tracking confirmed. Evelyn typed one response, still unstable. She didn't look at the helicopters yet. She didn't need to. Back in the ER, chaos pressed harder. "His chest isn't moving. Pressure's building. Look at his neck." Caldwell froze, neck tension. The words Evelyn had used replayed in his mind. "Look at the tension." "Stop," he said suddenly. The room slowed, hands hovering mid-motion. "What?" a resident asked. Caldwell stared at the patient's upper chest, then his neck veins distended, now unmistakable. Cold realization hit him like ice water. "Damn it," he breathed. "We missed it." A nurse swallowed. "You mean—" "Tension pneumothorax," Caldwell said quietly. The words tasted like failure. Someone whispered, "She tried to tell us." No one argued. Caldwell turned sharply toward the door. "Where's security?" he demanded. "They escorted her out," the charge nurse replied. "Get her back," Caldwell said. Now, security rushed for the exit. They came back empty. "She's already gone," one officer said. "Off hospital property." Caldwell's heart dropped. Outside the trauma bay, the lights flickered briefly. A low vibration rolled through the floor. "What was that?" someone whispered. Another vibration followed, stronger. Windows rattled. The sound deepened, rotors. Every head turned toward the glass. In the administrative office, the night supervisor's phone rang. He answered casually. Then his face drained of color. "Yes, yes, sir, understood." He hung up slowly. "What is it?" someone asked. His voice barely worked. "Military aircraft have landed on our helipad." "Silence." "Why?" another whispered. Before he could answer, the hospital's public address system clicked, then went silent without announcement. Phones stopped ringing, elevators locked, security radios crackled with unfamiliar voices. Back in the ER, Caldwell stared at the patient, still crashing, still slipping away. "We need decompression," he said urgently. "Now." "But the nurse," someone began. Caldwell clenched his fists. "Then I'll do it." He reached for the kit, but his hands shook. He stopped. He knew he didn't have the confidence anymore. The doors to the ER opened, not rushed, not loud. Measured footsteps echoed across the tile. Men in dark uniforms entered, scanning, assessing, taking in everything in seconds. One of them stopped at the center of the room. "Where is Nurse Evelyn Ross?" he asked. No one answered immediately. Because in that moment, everyone finally understood. Removing her hadn't removed a complication. It had exposed one, and now the people who never arrived by ambulance had come because of it. The moment the uniformed personnel entered the ER, sound itself seemed to retreat. Not the alarms, not the monitors, people, conversations died mid-sentence. A nurse froze with a syringe half-drawn. A resident stopped typing. Even the patient's frantic alarms felt distant beneath the sudden awareness that something far larger than hospital protocol had just stepped onto the floor. The men didn't rush. They didn't raise their voices. They didn't ask permission. They moved with the kind of confidence that came from never needing approval. One of them, taller, broader, with silver threading his hair, stopped at the center of the ER and looked around slowly. His eyes cataloged everything. The lockdown trauma bay, the crashing patient, the shaken attending physician. Then he spoke. "Where is Nurse Evelyn Ross?" Dr. Ryan Caldwell swallowed. I'm the attending," he said, stepping forward. "What's going on?" The man turned his head just enough to acknowledge him. "What's going on?" he said calmly. is that a cleared medical asset was removed from patient care while a high-priority individual deteriorated. Caldwell blinked. Cleared asset? The man didn't answer. He gestured once. Two more uniformed personnel moved instantly, one toward the nurse's station, the other toward security. "Lock down this wing," the man ordered. "No one leaves, no one enters." Security obeyed without question. Caldwell felt his authority evaporate in real time. In Trauma Bay 1, the patient convulsed again. BP's barely readable. Oxygen S at 60. Caldwell turned back toward the bed, panic sharpening his movements. "We need decompression now," he said. "Prep the needle." His hands reached for the kit. They stopped halfway, because he knew who should be doing this. "Where is she?" he demanded. No one answered. Outside, near the ambulance bay, Evelyn Ross heard the helicopters fully power down. The night air vibrated as the rotors slowed, then stopped completely. The sudden quiet felt unnatural, like the calm after artillery. A side door opened. Two Marines stepped out. They scanned the area instinctively before their eyes landed on Evelyn. They froze. "Ma'am," one said softly. Evelyn nodded once. "Evening. We're escorting you inside," the other said. "Senior command is already on site." Evelyn didn't ask questions. She never did when orders came that way. She followed. Back in the ER, the senior officer turned toward the trauma bay. "That patient is minutes from arrest," he said. "Why hasn't pressure been relieved?" Caldwell's voice caught. "We intubated before," the officer's gaze snapped to him. "You increased intrathoracic pressure," he asked. Caldwell didn't answer. He didn't have to. The officer exhaled slowly through his nose. "You made it worse." A resident whispered. "She warned us." The officer's jaw tightened. The ER doors opened again. This time, footsteps sounded different, lighter, measured, purposeful. Evelyn Ross walked in. She wasn't flanked dramatically. She wasn't announced, but the effect was immediate. The room went quiet, not because someone demanded silence, but because every instinct in the room recognized command. Evelyn didn't look at the uniforms first. She didn't look at Caldwell. She looked at the patient. Her pace quickened. "What's his status?" she asked. Caldwell answered automatically. "Crashing, suspected tension pneumothorax, You intubated," Evelyn finished. "Yes," her jaw tightened slightly. She didn't scold, she didn't hesitate. "Prep decompression," she said. "Now." A nurse moved instantly. No one questioned her. As Evelyn stepped to the bedside, the senior officer watched closely. "That's her," someone whispered. The officer nodded. He didn't need confirmation. He recognized command presence when he saw it. Evelyn assessed in seconds, neck veins, chest rise, resistance under her hand. Same signs, less time. She positioned herself. "On my count," she said, the nurse assisting her swallowed. "Ready? 1. The room leaned in without realizing it. 2. Caldwell's heart pounded in his ears. Evelyn acted. The needle went in. The hiss of escaping air tore through the bay, violent, unmistakable. The patient gasped. His chest rose sharply, uneven at first, then deeper. The monitor responded instantly. Heart rate slowed. Oxygen climbed. Blood pressure stabilized just enough to pull him back from the edge. The alarms softened. No one spoke. No one breathed. Then someone whispered, "She did it." Evelyn stayed focused, stabilizing the tube, adjusting positioning, issuing calm, precise instructions. "Chest tube next," she said. "Prepare." The team moved in sync now, no hesitation, no arguments. Caldwell watched her work, stunned. "You knew from the start," he said quietly. Evelyn didn't look at him. "Yes." "You tried to tell us?" "Yes. And she glanced at him briefly. "You didn't listen," she said. "It happens." The words weren't cruel, they were factual. The senior officer stepped closer. "That intervention saved his life," he said. Evelyn nodded once, still working. The officer turned to Caldwell. "You removed her from care," he said evenly. "Do you understand what that cost?" Caldwell swallowed. "Yes." "Good," the officer replied, "because you're about to explain it." Minutes later, the patient was stable enough for transfer. The ER buzzed again, but differently now. Quieter, sharper, everyone moved with a new awareness. The officer approached Evelyn once more. "Senior command wants a briefing," he said. "They're en route from the base." Evelyn nodded. I'll finish here. He hesitated. You could have escalated earlier. Evelyn finally looked at him. I wanted them to see the mistake, she said, not just hear about it. The officer studied her for a long moment, then he nodded. As Evelyn stepped back from the bedside, the ER remained silent, not out of fear but respect. No one had announced who she was. No one had needed to, because when she walked in, the room hadn't gone silent by accident. It had gone silent because command had arrived. The ER didn't return to normal after the patient stabilized. It couldn't. Too many lines had already been crossed. The alarms had softened, monitors settling into steady rhythms, but the air itself felt heavier, charged with the kind of tension that didn't come from medical urgency, but from accountability finally catching up. Uniformed personnel remained positioned throughout the wing, not aggressively, not theatrically. Just present enough to make it clear that this space was no longer governed by hospital politics. Dr. Ryan Caldwell stood near the trauma bay entrance, hands clasped behind his back now, posture rigid in a way that had nothing to do with confidence. He watched as Evelyn Ross finished securing the chest tube and stepped back from the patient. She peeled off her gloves calmly and dropped them into the bin. Vitals are holding, she said. He'll survive transport. A collective breath released from the room. Caldwell nodded. Thank you. Evelyn met his eyes briefly. You're welcome. It was the first time all night their exchange carried no friction. Footsteps approached again, slower this time, deliberate. A man entered the ER wearing a Marine service uniform, his presence instantly recognizable even to those who didn't know ranks by sight. He wasn't tall, but his posture radiated authority. His hair was cropped short, silver at the edges. His expression was unreadable. Conversation stopped, not out of fear, out of instinct. The man stopped several feet from Evelyn and studied her for a moment. Then he spoke. At ease, Commander. A ripple moved through the ER. Commander, Caldwell's breath caught. The Marine stepped closer. I was informed you were removed from care. Yes, sir, Evelyn replied, and that your identification was confiscated. Yes, the man's jaw tightened slightly. That decision was made without clearance, he said, and without understanding the scope of who you are. Evelyn remained silent. The Marine turned toward the room. For those of you unaware, he said evenly, Nurse Evelyn Ross is also Commander Evelyn Ross, United States Marine Corps, currently assigned to Joint Medical Operations. Gasps followed. A resident whispered, Marine Commander? Caldwell felt heat rush to his face. She requested low visibility, the Marine continued. Temporary credentials, no rank displayed, no recognition. His gaze sharpened. She did not request to be ignored. The senior administrator stepped forward, voice trembling. Sir, we had no idea. That is not the issue, the Marine interrupted. The issue is that when she identified a life-threatening error, she was silenced instead of heard. Silence fell hard. Caldwell swallowed. I made the call, he said quietly. I take responsibility. The Marine studied him for a long moment. Do you understand why she was here? He asked. Caldwell shook his head. No, sir. She was embedded to observe, the Marine replied, to assess how civilian trauma centers function under pressure, how decisions are made when hierarchy conflicts with reality. Caldwell felt his stomach drop. And tonight, the Marine continued, you provided that data. Evelyn shifted her weight slightly. I didn't intend for it to escalate like this, she said. The Marine looked back at her. You intended to save a life. Yes, then you succeeded. He turned toward the uniformed personnel lining the ER. Stand down perimeter in phases, he ordered. We'll maintain oversight until transfer is complete. Yes, sir, came the immediate response. In the trauma bay, the patient stirred faintly. Evelyn noticed instantly and moved closer, checking responsiveness. He's waking, she said. The Marine stepped beside her. He won't remember much, he said. That's fine, Evelyn replied. He doesn't need to. The Marine nodded. He's one of ours. That confirmed what many had already guessed. Caldwell approached cautiously. Commander Ross, he said, voice respectful now, I want to apologize. Evelyn turned toward him fully. "You don't owe me an apology," she said. "You owe your patients attention." Caldwell nodded. "I understand." She held his gaze for a moment longer, then nodded once. As preparations for transfer began, the Marine pulled Evelyn aside. "You could have revealed yourself earlier," he said quietly. "Yes, you chose not to." "Yes. Why?" Evelyn looked back at the ER, the staff moving more carefully now, the absence of shouting, the weight of what they'd witnessed settling in. "Because respect that's forced doesn't last," she said. "Respect that's earned does." The Marine studied her, then gave a small nod. "That's why you command," he said. The gurney rolled out minutes later, escorted by personnel who didn't need instructions. The patient was alive, stable, on his way to definitive care. As the doors closed behind them, the ER stood still. No one spoke, not because they were afraid. Because they were thinking. The Marine turned back to the staff one final time. "This facility will receive a full review," he said. "Not to punish, but to correct." He looked at Caldwell. "And next time someone asks you to pause and look," he added, "you do it." "Yes, sir," Caldwell replied. The Marine turned toward Evelyn. "You're done here," he said, "for tonight." Evelyn nodded. She unclipped her hospital badge, not in surrender but habit, and placed it on the counter. Then she reached into her pocket and clipped it back on. Same badge, same scrubs. Different weight now. As she walked toward the exit, the ER remained silent, not because she demanded it, but because they finally understood who had been standing among them all along. Morning crept into Harbor Point Medical Center quietly, not with urgency, not with alarms, with exhaustion. The ER looked the same on the surface, monitors blinking, carts rolling, nurses rotating shifts, but something underneath had changed. The night had left a mark no report or memo could erase. The patient was gone now. Transferred under military escort before dawn, stabilized and breathing on his own by the time the sun touched the horizon. His bed sat empty in Trauma Bay 1, sheets stripped, equipment cleaned, the space already prepared for the next emergency. But no one forgot who had been there. Or who had saved him. Evelyn Ross stood at the sink, washing her hands slowly. The water ran warm over her skin as she followed the same routine she always had, thorough, methodical, precise. She didn't rush. Dr. Ryan Caldwell watched from across the room. He hadn't slept. Neither had anyone else. "I've filed the incident report," he said finally, "fully documented, no omissions." Evelyn shut off the water and dried her hands. "Good," she said. Caldwell hesitated. "The review board will ask questions." "They should," Evelyn replied, "and they'll want to speak with you." She nodded. "I expected that." Caldwell exhaled slowly. "You could have destroyed us tonight." Evelyn met his eyes. "I wasn't here to destroy anything," she said. "I was here to see if it worked." "And?" he asked quietly. Evelyn looked around the ER, the tired faces, the subdued voices, the way people paused now before acting. "It can," she said, "if you let it." At the nurse's station, conversations were softer than usual. She didn't raise her voice once, someone whispered. "Did you see how everyone just stopped?" "I thought she was just quiet." "So did I." Respect traveled faster than rumors ever did. Near the exit, the Marine officer who had overseen the operation approached Evelyn one last time. "Command is satisfied," he said. "Your assessment confirmed what we suspected." Evelyn nodded. "Then my job's done." "For now," he corrected. She offered a faint smile. "For now," he hesitated. "You'll be reassigned soon." "I know, and until then?" Evelyn glanced back at the ER. "I'll keep working nights," she said. "People listen better when they're tired." The officer chuckled quietly. "That they do." He saluted her, not sharply, not ceremonially, just enough to acknowledge rank and respect. Evelyn returned it briefly, then he turned and walked away. Shift change began. Day staff filtered in, sensing something had happened without knowing the details. They noticed the way night staff spoke with gravity, the way Dr. Caldwell no longer rushed his words, the way the ER felt quieter, more intentional. Evelyn handed off her patients cleanly, answering questions without embellishment. When she finished, she gathered her things. At the door, the senior administrator stopped her. "Commander Ross," he said awkwardly. Evelyn paused. "You don't need to use that here," she said calmly. He nodded, embarrassed. "Nurse Ross, then, will be making changes." "I hope so," she replied. "You'll be protected going forward," he added quickly. Evelyn met his gaze. "I wasn't unprotected before," she said. "I was unheard." The administrator swallowed. She walked past him and pushed open the doors. Outside, the morning air was crisp and clean. The helicopters were gone, no flashing lights, no armed personnel. Just a hospital waking up to a new day. Evelyn stood for a moment in the pale sunlight, breathing deeply. She thought of the patient, alive because someone finally paused and listened. She thought of the ER, changed, even if only slightly. And she thought of all the times she'd chosen silence over recognition, not because she lacked authority, but because true authority didn't need to announce itself. She adjusted her jacket and walked toward her car. Behind her, Harbor Point Medical Center continued its work, a little quieter, a little wiser, and far less likely to ignore the night nurse again, because some power arrives loudly, and some walks in so quietly that the only warning is the silence it leaves behind.